Hello and welcome to AEF TV in association with Engerati. I'm joined now, and it's the first day at the show, so forgive the noise in the background if you can hear it. I'm joined now by Reda, who's from Access Infra Africa. Welcome. Thank you for making the time to be here. And in doing some research for this interview, I came across a lot of sort of things in the news about Access in terms of sort of development funding and things like that. Can you just clear up a little bit about what Access do, and then we'll get into the guts of it.
That's an orderly point to start.
Yeah.
So first, thank you very much for having us. I think there's indeed been a lot of mix-up. Is Access a fund? Is Access a developer? What does Access do? And I think, simply put, Access is not a fund. Access actually is a developer, owner and operator of power assets with a vision of becoming eventually a private Pan-African utility, a private IPP across the African continent.
And so you do have some funding elements. You also own and operate it. So you're trying to be involved at every single stage of the power project.
Absolutely. So the idea for Access Infra Africa is we do not own a stake in any power plant in which we do not take an active role developing the asset, nor do we go to develop assets which we intend to flip at financial close. We actually develop assets in the intention of taking an active ownership and participation interest in the project itself.
Okay, so when people sit in this chair, they can usually be demarked into power developers or operators, owners, or whatever. What made you take the decision to sort of say that actually we need to be involved all the way through the chain? And what are you trying to solve by having that involvement all the way through?
I think today the opportunity in Africa is well understood. The power gap, so on. I think the challenges as well are understood as far as markets are concerned, so the market challenges, be it regulatory frameworks and so on. But I think there's still one major challenge that now starts to make some noise, which is the sheer availability of projects into which funds can be deployed. So in reality, you've got this huge wall of money available out there to fund projects, but this is to fund what you call shovel-ready projects that can go into construction immediately post.
So all the due diligence has been done, it's been de-risked, everything.
Absolutely.
And, okay.
Absolutely. Now, the issue with Access is if we went on and committed more money to just looking at projects that have been completely de-risked, as you rightly said, we would end up in the batch of what you would call the private equity funds, and we all know today that the performance is, I might say, not up to standard. I mean, the money is still in the pockets rather than fully deployed because of the deal flow.
Right.
So our idea is we did not want to get stuck, and we decided to take the risk to invest into early stage development of our own projects, create the pipeline into which we will eventually invest as well.
So does that, from a mechanical perspective, does that transparency of being involved at the early stage all the way through, would you say it makes you more open to what other people would consider riskier projects?
I think it makes a few things. I think first it makes our projects easier to finance because, again, the senior lenders are usually the ones with the biggest financial stake in any project. And one of the key issues that senior lenders have is this flip over that usually happens between developer and owner. And as you know, at any handing over process, there's a lot of information that misses, and many of this information can actually be material to the transaction itself.
And is there also, like with any transaction where you hand over, is there also some sort of inherent mistrust? So are they, am I being given all the right information here, or am I being told what I need to hear in order for this to happen?
I mean, unfortunately, window dressing and smoke screening and what have you is human nature, I think. And I think that's indeed the risk that lenders usually don't like to see, a flip over from developer to final owner. And this seamless transition from development to ownership is really what creates value and creates real tangible value within the project.
So are you seeing more sort of investment funds or whatever, because I would imagine you can't do everything by yourself, engaging with you guys in a disproportionate level, so because they know that actually there can't be any misinformation because there is no such thing as flipping to external person.
Spot on,
Yeah.
spot on. I think not only do we bring a very high level of surety to lenders on that process, but as a matter of fact, financial investors find the surety in the process because we continue to have skin in the game as developers. And we continue to say that our revenues and our returns are made on the long-term prosperity of that project. So that's absolutely true.
So you said, I don't know whether you said it earlier or off air, but your vision is to become the largest independent Pan-African utility, effectively.
Well, I think I said our vision is to become a Pan-African utility. Largest is a word you graciously added.
Okay.
I would take it.
Okay, fine. Well, that's the new mission statement now. So where are you guys? How many power projects have you already got? Or what's in the pipeline? Where are you winning?
Absolutely. So today, where our pipeline stands, we stand at 970 megawatts of pipeline.
Right.
So that's close to a gigawatt of pipeline.
Right. How many projects is that exactly?
So as far as projects are concerned, this is 970 megawatts split across 11 different projects.
Okay.
With spread over roughly 15 different geographies. Okay. The idea for us is, number one, we do not wish to be focused on a single African market. That's an important thing for us.
Is that a de-risking thing for you guys, or is that just an opportunity thing?
I think it's two things. There's an element of de-risking where we don't want one single market to have any systemic risk to our business. That's number one. But I think number two is because of the nature of the African continent. There's not a single market. Keeping aside South Africa, maybe Nigeria and Egypt, there's no one single market that can provide you the deal flow to achieve our vision, at least. So there's a multitude of that. So our first operating asset is coming in Uganda, which is a 10 megawatt solar, on the smaller side of the scale, but yet has its advantages as well. We've got now around 200 megawatts of projects in Egypt, 50 megawatts of hybrid projects in Benin, roughly 100 megawatts of licenses of solar projects in Ghana.
So is most of your stuff on the renewable side then, or is it just by nature becoming an increasing part of the mix?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think today we do not make it on an intentional basis to say we want to be a renewables only company. The idea is we want to become a technology agnostic utility at the end of the day. But I think indeed renewables is becoming such an important player in any energy mix that it is taking a bigger and bigger proportion of our portfolio.
Can I ask you a slightly tangential question? Because in some of the things that we've been covering on my network as well is when you bring in power projects that are renewable or have a renewable element of it, by default you're bringing in a different type of DNA in terms of the power provision. It fluctuates. Our audience knows this.
Sure.
Are you also seeing that there is an issue with the sort of inherent transmission grid to be able to deal with that type of power? It's not baseload type power. So do you not think that there needs to be a much bigger focus on the transmission grids to be ready for this type of power?
I think intermittency is an issue. Grids is an issue that goes, I think, beyond renewables in Africa, as a matter of fact. I mean, it's not just an issue for
it's just
renewables.
aged infrastructure, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. However, you're absolutely right. I mean, we see with the major projects, be it Lake Turkana or what have you, major infrastructure that has to be done on the grid. And that's why, if you see on many of our projects, we have erred on the smaller size of the projects. For example, in Uganda, we went for 10 megawatts. And the reason, of course, the program was designed accordingly, but one of the main reasons is we wanted to have a project that could be plugged into the existing infrastructure. And this, of course, could open a whole tangential discussion as well as to the role of smaller projects in that regard.
Yeah, because the smaller projects can introduce less strain in the existing. So while we've got time here, you were also talking about the sort of disruptive nature of some of what you're doing, and in my research as well, I came across this fund that you've launched, and I actually, let me say it properly, it's a co-development fund of 5 million. And when we were talking off air, you were quite excited about how disruptive that could be. So just tell us a little bit about what you're trying to achieve with that co-development fund.
Absolutely. I think we are very excited, as a matter of fact, about Access Co-Development Fund. Its inaugural deployment actually is scheduled for this year. we have already shortlisted 4 projects that out of 55 different projects that have actually applied for the program, and actually 4 or 3 or 2 or 1 of the winners will be announced in AEF over here on the 11th of June.
Okay.
At 2 p.m. actually. There's an all-star panel made up of Proparco, IFC, FMO, and ourselves. Right. That will be selecting the final winners.
Yeah. And why is it so disruptive again? If I can give you, if you can leave us with a soundbite.
I think disruptive is an interesting word. I think today the lack of projects, as we started with, is a major issue in Africa. And there has been many solutions out there, and there continue to be many different solutions being deployed, be it through grant money available through African Development Bank, other revenues, or be it through initiatives such as InfraCo that tries to provide development money and so on. I think Access Co-Development Fund is really the first time where the private sector starts to play a role or try to play a role in catalyzing this kind of
so this is outside of any bank, outside of any NGO or governmental fund.
Absolutely.
Just
and the sheer metrics of how it works is also very interesting, because today if you go to one place you can get the money, but you can get the technical resources from the other place. So what Access Co-Development Fund does, it brings the money and the technical resources of doing the project under one umbrella. Not only that, but it also brings the certainty of final ownership into the same umbrella, which means that Access ourselves will own the asset eventually.
Aren't you in danger of being seen as people who are trying to drive some sort of monopoly?
Not at all. I think there's no room for monopolies in Africa.
Right.
I think the cake in Africa in itself is still wide open, and I think we're many years before we can start discussing about monopolies.
Before we can start discussing monopoly. Well, listen, Reda, it's been lovely to talk to you, and thank you for taking the time. And thank you as well for watching. Again, if you're picking up a lot of noise, it's a very busy AEF this year. And I hope you enjoyed this interview, and many more to come.